Class 187 on the Golden Doves, or page 108, section 4, formulation and publication. The technical term for publication of a written text is publicly placed, right? My father discusses this in greater detail in his book, The Horizontal Society, which was written decades after this book. But the idea was that the publication of the text as one of the books of Israel was done by placing the text in the Bet HaMikdash with the books of Israel. Texts such as the Scroll of Fast, Megillat Ta'anit, and the Scroll of Esther were thus published. However, a published text is not yet a book. So interesting, so I misspoke just by a slight amount. A published text, just because the text was published as a written document, let's say, doesn't make it included in the books of Israel. It doesn't, meaning the canonization requires something additional. So it's first publicly placed. So for example, Megillat Ta'anit, it was a list of days on which there was no permissibility to have a Ta'anit on those days. So that was a written text, but it's not part of the Tanakh, obviously. So a publicly placed text is merely a text accessible to all. Right, so it's accessible. You understand the idea of accessibility? It's accessible to all. In contradistinction to a privately held or unpublished text, right? A book is a text that was accepted by the people and certified by the authorities as a legal document. So you see, they have that extra step. So first, accessibility, right? Accessibility makes it a public text, so it's a written text now. In order to attain the status of a canonized book, it has to be accepted by the people, like Kibelu v'kiyemu, and certified by the authorities as a legal document, right? So the people have to accept it, and then the Bet Din, the Sanhedrin, has to basically make a decision. Only such a text may become the object of canonical exegesis. And now that it becomes one of the Sefarim of Israel, you can make the Rasha on it. Meaning, you couldn't make the Rasha on it before. Thus, in order to acquire the status of a book, a text not only requires publication, but it must be accepted. So you see the idea, the difference in publication, which makes it a public document, and canonization, let's call it, or acceptance by the people in the Bet Din, which makes it a book that can be subject to derasha. Let's see just footnote number 2 here. Footnote number 2. Okay, so first let's footnote number 1. What was that? There must have been a footnote 1 somewhere, and I must have missed it. Oh yeah, and the Megillat Esther were thus published. Okay, I'm reading footnote 1 first. See above, section 3. The passage in Kiddushin in which a Sadoki argued that the Torah is rolled. Oh boy, reading glasses. Okay, that's better. In which a Sadoki argued that the Torah is rolled and deposited. Right, so you roll the Sefer Torah, the scroll of the Sefer Torah is rolled up, and then it's deposited. Maybe an allusion to its publication. Interesting. However, he carefully avoided mentioning that it is a book. Why? This becomes clear when we consider that the status of book bears directly upon the issue of canonical exegesis, a fundamental institution bitterly disputed by the Saddukim, because the Saddukim were against, so to speak, the Torah Shebe'al Peh, or the Derashot of Hazal. They only wanted the literal sense of the text, whatever that even means. But the point is, that's why he avoids referring to it as a sefer, because that would imply derasha, which of course are against derasha, and there's nothing of substance in footnote 2 other than the source, of course. So getting back to the main text. According to the rabbis, prior to its canonization, the scroll of Esther was publicly placed, manha, in the royal archives of Persia and Media. Okay. see footnote 3. Okay. Manha in the royal archives of Persia and Media, but it was not a book. At this point, it was not a book. You remember in the Gemara, when the Chachamim got back to Esther, and they said, yeah, but Sin'ah, you're going to be bringing Sin'ah upon us for publishing the book of Megillat Esther. And she said, yeah, but it's already in Sefer Divrei Hayamim of Paras Umadai. So you see, it was Manha. That's what this is referring to, the Royal Archives of Persian Media. But it was not a book, because we didn't accept it as a book. Speaking on behalf of Esther, the rabbis formulated the official request for canonization as write me on a sefer, kitvuni al sefer, al sefer. She doesn't want it just to be publicized. It was publicized, right? But she wants an addition to the publication, which is what happened to Megillat Tanit, which was also publicized, but she wants it to be kitvuni al sefer, that is, as a book, and now you can make the Rashot on Megillat Esther. Rabbi Yehoshua, who opposed the canonization of the scroll of Esther, argued that it was only a zikaron, memorandum, not a sefer. Right, so that's what Rabbi Yehoshua says. You can't publicize it as a book because this is a manuscript version, Siti Tukei Sofrim, right? So the manuscript says that Rabbi Yehoshua says that it was a zikaron. Zikaron means a memorandum, but just because it's a memorandum recording certain important events, again, doesn't make it a sefer. This view is the basis for Shemuel's position that it was consigned for reading, but it was not consigned for writing, right? Nitena likrot velo nitena likatev. Let's read the footnote. The printed text is corrupt. However, from the commentary of Rabbi Hananel, it is obvious that we must read this. We must read. Write this. Kitvu zot refers to what is written here and in Deuteronomy as a memorandum. Kitvu zot zikaron refers to the scroll of Esther. You see how? So this opinion is that the scroll of Esther is a zikaron, it's a memorandum, it's not a sefer. Al sefer, kitvu zot zikaron basefer, right? Refers to the prophets. These are the words of Rabbi Yehoshua. So Rabbi Yehoshua is consistent with Shemuel. The Megillat Esther didn't reach the status of a sefer; it reached the status of a zikaron. This version, I bet there's a shinui nuschalt in the Gemara. That's why my father is going through this footnote to point out what the original nosach was. This version appears in Mechilta Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. However, what is reported in our Talmud in the name of Rabbi Yehoshua is reported in the Mechilta in the name of Rabbi Elazar HaModai, and vice versa. Accordingly, the term ketana'eh, the proceeding, is a controversy among the Tannaitic authorities. Appearing in our Talmudic discussion, serves to introduce the opinion of Rabbi Yehoshua that the scroll of Esther is only a zikaron, in opposition to the preceding Tannaitic source declaring that it is a sefer. Since this is the issue dividing the Tannaitic authorities, Rabbi Hananel declared, and the law is that that in a book, al sefer refers to the scroll of Esther. So there's a problem with the current, or the standard version rather, of the Bavli Mesechet Megillah on that. And my father, using Rabbi Hananel, precisely explains what the correct version and the Tiktukei Sofrim version of the Talmud is. Okay, that was a side point. In other words, it may be read from a written text, but the text itself is only a memorandum, not a book, right? That's the Shitat Rabbi Yehoshua, from which you get Shitat Shemuel, that it's not a book, it's a zikaron. The prevalent view accepting the canonization of the scroll Esther argued that in the Pentateuch, prophets and hagiographa references may be found, suggesting that it is or may become a sefer. Okay. Because the question is, what does it mean al sefer? So according to the next opinion, al sefer refers to nevi'im and ketuvim. All right. And according to that opinion, since Esther was part of the ketuvim, then it would be the sefer. Okay. And that's in opposition to Rabbi Yehoshua and to Shemuel. Canonization is the formal acceptance or certification of a book. that it is consigned to be expounded. Nitena lidaresh. So nitena lidaresh is the final stage of accepting a book as part of the Alva Visri. Formal acceptance is connected to mesira, indicating the surrendering of a document to the court by its legal holder. Right, so you moser a document to the court. Somebody, Reuven, I lent Reuven money, he has to pay me back. I take the document, the promissory note to the court, and he moser the promissory note to the court, and now the court has the right to make derasha, to interpret the promissory note. Therefore, mesira, thereby empowering the court to apply derasha to the interpretation of the document. Therefore, mesira is one of the three constitutive elements defining canonization of the scriptures. Concerning this fundamental principle, Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon wrote, and he wrote this in Sefer Hagalui. The constituents of prophetic writings are these. One is that it should include some mention of prophecy. For example, Vaydaber Hashem, right? Or the teaching of some unknown matter, indicating thus divine inspiration, as in Proverbs, right? Kohelet, Esther. The second element is proof that the author of the book was a prophet. Well, we want to know if the person who wrote the book, although the substance indicates prophecy, but we want to know who wrote it, okay? And the third element is that the nation accept that book in the collection of sacred books. That's amazing. So you see, like, these things are so important. This is like the Constitution of Israel, like understanding these points. And Rabbeinu Saadia writes it, and my father, Baruch Hashem, he expounds upon these teachings. This is the Andalusian Hachamim, right? And transmit it, right? So the book has to be accepted and then transmitted. If these three conditions are not met, but only one or two, that book is not a prophetic book. All right, I'll stop by.